welcome to the latest in the Leaders with Ambition podcast series. And today I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest, Richard Dixon. And Richard is HR Director at James Cooper Creston. And it's going to be a really interesting conversation today, which sees Richard starting his career thinking, maybe I'll become a policeman, and then actually do his CIPD studies, finding his love for HR. And it's interesting. He'll talk a lot about the importance of sponsorship, mentorship and coaching and how different these are, but how important they are for people to really develop their careers. And Richard has made some really intentional career choices along the way. So whether it was thinking about working for an insurance firm and then wanting to get a law firm under his belt, and obviously where he is today at James Cooper Creston. And alongside all of this is the importance of communication and how that really is at the heart of what we all should be doing, but definitely in a HR role. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Richard to bring his career history to life for us. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi everyone. So you'll probably tell straight away from my accent, although I live in Southampton, I'm actually originally from up north in Leeds, born in Edinburgh.
You're born in Edinburgh, yes. I can't
lived in Leeds. Moved down there when I was about 15, 18 months, so didn't quite pick up the Scottish accent, unfortunately. Yeah. But I can live with my Leeds accent. So yeah, after school, waited for the Thursday newspaper to come out with the job section in, and found a role at Eagle Star, as it was then. And that there started my career in insurance, I guess, because I was there for 17 years. So pretty much man and boy. Really lucky to get a variety of roles. So I started off in the claims department, moved across into underwriting, got some team leader experience with quite a large team, and that's where the spark, I guess, was lit from a personnel point of view as it was back then. And then fortunate enough to get a role in learning and development in the personnel team.
Yeah. And so when you found your love of working with people, what was it then that really made you think this could be a career for me?
I guess because a lot of my interactions were around, you could almost call it coaching, I guess, and helping people develop and be their best selves at work. So I think that's what triggered it for me. Not necessarily, yes, there's all sorts of, not so nice aspects to the role of being a line manager. That was the crux of it for me, is helping people to develop and get better.
I think that's great. And also, I know that you did study for your CIPD as well. Was that because you decided by then that you wanted to progress in what was personnel at the time? Yeah. Did you feel that you needed that qualification behind you then?
From what I was picking up and reading, it seemed the best step to take. And yes, the majority of roles at that time were asking for the qualification. So it made perfect sense for me to do that.
Is that still important now, do you think? Is what's more important? Experience? How do you think that's changed over the years?
Yeah, that's a good point, Nikki. I think very much experience. Having been through the qualification as well, yes, there are elements of it that give you better insight and, help support your knowledge building. But in terms of day-to-day approaches and strategies and tactics around some of the HR areas, experience very much, for me anyway, outweighs. And you see that in the market. I think many jobs will still put that in there as a desirable aspect for the individual, but you can't beat experience, and particularly experience in that particular industry, because industries are very different in terms of the issues that you have to face from day to day. I think that more outweighs the needs than a qualification.
And did you get a lot of coaching? Did you have a mentor at the time that was helping and assisting you? Because experience, you do need to be able to look around, don't you, and be able to emulate people that are doing that role or get ideas from different people.
Yeah, that's interesting, because yes, I had some great mentors / coaches who were business leaders. One was the managing director of the business unit I was in before I transitioned across to personnel, and would spend quite a bit of time talking through careers and what's next and how he got to where he got to, some of the choices he made. And then when I did transition, there was a bit of a gap there in terms of a period of time before I then found another business leader who was in HR, one of the HR directors, actually, who counselled and coached and mentored and helped me get my first generalist role, if you like, within Zurich, as it had become then.
But I think that's really important, isn't it? Because I do think within HR, people are particularly generous with their time when it comes to mentorship and coaching. Because as you say, it's about people, and you're in that line of work for a reason. But how important is it for people in all different aspects of their career to reach out and get some mentorship, which, as you say, is very different to coaching, isn't it?
Yes, totally. Very, I think. Just to sometimes listen to sort of some of the options that are available, some of the career paths, and listening to how, other individuals have got to where they've got to and how they've navigated the tricky world of work, whilst you may not want to sort of copy or emulate that. It certainly gives you a broader perspective in terms of, so it is achievable, and I might not want to follow that path, but it certainly gives you an idea of how to navigate some of the obstacles that you might come across.
Yeah, and a career in HR is a great career. But there's lots of processes, and you do have to do things in a certain way. Did that always come naturally to you? Was that learned behaviour?
Process has probably always been there, and I guess that goes back to my time in claims and underwriting, where there was a very, very strict process for each aspect of work that came in. And sometimes it's that foundation can allow you to then think broadly. If that comes naturally, then you can start to think a bit more broadly. And yes, there's a process there, but you can see where the boundaries are, where the parameters might be able to be extended a little bit. So yeah, certainly gives you a good foundation if you've got a grasp of why a process or a procedure is important.
Yeah, but I think it's also incredibly important in your sort of role to be able to, as you say, find the bandwidth within that process or procedure so that you are actually making it human, and that's what it's so important, isn't it?
And I guess that's the beauty and the difficulty with HR, because yes, there's lots of legislation, a lot of which is quite vague. So it does give you some discretion to a certain element, and that's where your experience can come in terms of, what experience of that particular situation you've had, how you've dealt with it, and understanding some of the case law around it. So yeah, it's nice in a way, but sometimes it's very unhelpful when you haven't got that clear black or white. Yeah,
lots of shades of grey, isn't there? And so you, as you mentioned, you were in Zurich, and then you also, as in the firm, not the country, and then you started to develop your career and started to make your intentional career moves about the sort of firms that you wanted to work for.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess I'd got to a point in Zurich, massive organisation, albeit I'd probably spent the last sort of 18 months working there, going through redundancy processes, procedures. It was a tough time for the country and, certainly the industry and that organisation. But I was still a big part of a big team, small cog in a big wheel. Yeah. So it made sense. And I think I probably had to look at exploring other opportunities for me to advance, because there was a lot of long timers that were there. So, it was time to explore other opportunities. So
you wanted to progress your career as well. Then you had that.
I did.
Sites, did you, to step up? Yeah,
I did. I'd had great exposure, so I thought I had a reasonable skill set.
Yeah,
albeit probably quite basic. So I knew I had to start getting some other experience, and that's what took me into my first role in London. And first professional services. It was a firm of surveyors. Yeah.
No looking back. Once you started to professional services, you can't.
Yeah. What goes around comes around.
And I take it this time it wasn't through the newspaper that you found your role.
No, we'd come into the digital world, albeit in its infancy. So yeah, I found a role that I liked the sound of, met with the people, liked what they were about and how they worked, and yeah, but very different role. So this was a role, they called it people services manager. So it was very much looking after the administration hub.
Right.
So it was all about process, all about procedures, and less about talking to the business necessarily. Although I helped shape that role, and it did evolve into a little bit of a generalist role, but not so much. So yeah, so it was managing a team within HR, which was my first role at doing that, and yeah, really enjoyed that.
That's great.
Found the commute tough, even at that age.
Yeah.
But like most things, you get used to it.
Yeah, you do. You have to, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
How did you find transitioning into the professional services world then? Because it's so different, and for your first role, particularly in that sort of level.
Yeah, I've been coming out of a massive corporate into a relatively small professional services firm, albeit. Whilst I was there, we were acquired by BNP Paribas. It was the speed in which you could get things done, change things. You know, you're not having to go through some sort of change program, and it was speak to the HR director. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's give it a go. And that was alien to me, but great at the same time. So yeah, that was the biggest change and realization for me in a professional services world is at the speed of change.
Did you think then that you were going to spend your career in professional services? Is that something that you were thinking this is where I like to be, because you could make that change and you could have that impact?
No, I don't know. No, not at that point. I think I was still a sponge from an HR perspective. So I couldn't tell you at that point whether I did know where my feet were gonna fall. I was more in the moment, more in the role, a bit like a Gen Z is probably now, in terms of what's in it for me right now. What can I get from this role? Not necessarily looking too far forward.
Yeah, and then you decided you wanted to work in a law firm as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I got the opportunity to work with a firm of solicitors, and again, it was knowing that you've got a group of partners that are on the same page, wanting the same things, and you think, this is going to make my job quite easy, hopefully. From an HR perspective, it tends to be more ignorance as opposed to reluctance in terms of evolving their practices and an approach to people. So yeah.
Well, that goes back to this communication piece, doesn't it, then? And that's how essential it is in your sort of role to be able to talk to so many different people, partners who are owning businesses, to the people that you're trying to get to make change as well. You know, is that a core of skill set that you need and you've got?
Very much so, because you're dealing with, you have to, remind yourselves that these are all business owners. They've all got their own priorities and their own challenges, and knowing how to navigate those conversations. Generally speaking, that there'll be a managing partner who will, be the crux of the decision making. But nevertheless, you're being pulled, and you've got to be able to communicate accordingly with those individuals, that you might not be able to do that right now, or there might be some challenges in order for us to progress with that. But yeah, communication is as we know, it's the heart of everything. You get some of that communication wrong, and it can have all sorts of ramifications.
And were you still continuing with your studies as well during this period of time? Were you continuing to learn your craft as well as having the experience? How did that work?
I'd pretty much finished my CIPD studies whilst I was still at Zurich. So I'd got the theory.
That was Timcat. That's what we like.
Yeah. And it didn't take long for me to find that actually there's not a massive, there's not a great deal of that qualification that you can easily interpret into, day-to-day HR life. So whilst it was nice to have, and I thought it was, a key step, you soon learn that, there's more to HR than just what you've learned over the last 2, 3, 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the hard way you learn these things as well, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes that's good as well. Throwing yourself in at the deep end. And there's plenty of resources that you can fall back on should you need to, but you can't beat having that hands-on experience.
And what about your network then during this period of time? Because one of the things I find fascinating again about HRDs, people at your level, is that you do have a network of people that you can, if you've got a situation that maybe is challenging or that you haven't come across before, you can reach out to each other, and people are generous with their time. Is that something that you've again focused on growing throughout your career, or does that happen almost by osmosis, or the people you meet on your CIBD qualification? How do you learn that?
Bit of both, really. Because I'm quite, most people will probably disagree, but I'm quite a shy individual. So I certainly early on, I found it difficult to know where to look to, talk to people easily. And that's where I found some of the line managers I've had along the way have been a great help. But in terms of a sort of HR network, that I didn't really have that until I was more senior.
Right.
And you start to get invited and start to hear about employment law updates, which are great, and then you start to meet people in different industries, different locations. But that was that was later on. So I didn't really have a HR network in those early days as such.
Would you recommend people do that though? Whatever area they would specialise in, is to build those networks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be able to bounce ideas off people that are detached, are not part of it, because you can get a very different perspective. So yeah, I would encourage it. So I found that quite difficult, but I'm sure many people won't.
Yeah, well, I do think it's hard because, as you say, it's knowing where to look and where to go to find these networks, isn't it? And I think now with the modern world that we live in, these things are you're bombarded constantly with invites.
It's so much easier now with social media. You can get easy access to forums and networking groups. Yeah, it's a lot easier now.
Bit different now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you found your way to James Cooper Creston, and that's been a very important part of your development and your career and to where you are today, hasn't it? What is it about the firm that is so special?
Again, it comes back to the partners, and I was fortunate during the interview process that I had the opportunity to meet quite a number of the partners, and again, I got a very quick sense that they were all wanting the same things. I think my experience of working with large corporates as well as professional services firms and partnerships, I think that was something that they were looking for, so they could open their eyes in terms of what we could achieve. But yeah, getting to know the partnership fairly early on was a massive help, and understanding that actually this is a great team of partners that are wanting the same thing. Let's go in the same direction. Yes.
Yeah, it can be quite unusual at times as well, because as you said earlier on, the partnership, the whole purpose is people do have their own way of working, and they are independent business leaders, so it's great.
Yeah, their own agendas, their own priorities, absolutely. So it can be quite tricky to navigate, and in certainly in some of the larger partnerships, you do get characters that aren't quite in tune or in line, which can be troublesome, but not here. It was sounds like a cliche, but it just felt right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you knew. When you know, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. When you know, you know.
And when you know it's wrong, you know it's definitely wrong.
Yeah.
And so I know that you've grown your career there as well, and obviously becoming director. And part of the process of your involvement was actually transitioning through COVID, wasn't it? Which was, I think, where a lot of HRDs really came into their own, because everybody looked to you to be going, what do you do?
Yeah. And it was one of those strange things where there's nothing else to tap into.
Yeah.
This was the first for us to experience. So, there was no experience, there was no knowledge. It was like, not quite the blind leading the blind, but,
not too far off.
What can we do? How do we navigate this? We were very, very fortunate from a technology point of view that we just started to roll out new IT kit and infrastructure across the firm. So which meant come that 23rd of March, when the button was pressed, we turned on, we were live, we were working, albeit different, weird, wonderful. So yeah, there was a bit of fortuitous luck there, in terms of that. But very early on, we started that communication, and starting to help people understand what we were going through, how they could look after themselves. We did a lot of focus on well-being, and encouraging people to go out when they could. And if you can't, then, make sure you're not at your screen too long at once. And also things for children to do as well, because at those early stages, it was homeschooling. So yeah, and we knew we had to accommodate that, and that was fine. So yeah, and you started to see children on the calls, or pets wandering across the screen. It was lovely to a certain extent. And for parents, whilst challenging, I'm sure they'll look back at that time as quite fond in terms of having that, bond and that one-to-one time, which they wouldn't normally have.
I think it's interesting as well that a lot of people said it really humanised partners as well. As you say, you can see that they're also going through similar challenges with having children, pets, and everybody had their own personal challenges through that period of time, and it was really traumatic for some people, wasn't it? But it was a sense that you guys really, as a firm, wanted to support, as you said, the well-being and health and
yes, yeah, absolutely. And as soon as we were able to, then we did open our offices to those that did feel more vulnerable and just didn't have the environment or the setup at home that enabled them to work at their best. So we did allow people to come into the office when we could.
Yeah, that was really.
And we had several individuals at each office, I guess, that needed and we're thankful for that space.
Yeah, it's amazing that you were able to do that, isn't it? It's so good. And I know that also at the firm, you have a foundation, the James Cooper Foundation.
Yeah.
That's something that you are all very passionate about. Can you share a bit about that as well?
So this came out of was part of our 100-year celebrations a couple of years ago.
Right.
So it's still, for us, it's still in its infancy, although we've been thinking about toying with the idea for quite some time. But huge opportunity for us to give something back to our communities. So yeah, it was a little while in the making, but it was nice to be able to tie that into being 100 years independence.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and we've got that's a positive thing.
Yes, yeah, it is, and yeah, it allows us to have a number of people across the firm as well internally, be part of that and help work through, the rounds that we open up for charities to bid for support. So we've been able to help so many charities already, which is fantastic.
That's really good. Amazing thing to do.
Yes.
And so, looking at some of the challenges that, you've personally faced over the years, what would you say have been your biggest challenges to date?
Me personally, it's probably a couple. It was knowing where I wanted to be from a career point of view. Once I didn't make it into the police force, it was like, what do I do? What do I do? But got my head down. I thought maybe there's a career for me here at Eagle Star, and that was that. So that took a little while to find my feet. But then it was about, okay, what do I want to do? How do I get there? What do I need to achieve? What tools, experience, knowledge am I going to need to help me get there? And I guess, one of the biggest challenges was just before that COVID was losing my daughter to cancer. So, which no parent should outlive their children. So that was tough, but at the same time, I think COVID actually was a great distraction in a sad way, because it wasn't long after that we were in it. So and that took most of my time, if not all of my time, in terms of getting to grips with how we could navigate it, what we could do to help staff through it. So whilst awful, and it continues to be, but that was a bit of a saving grace in terms of being able to focus my attention on other things.
Very traumatic. I really feel for you. And I know that you're really passionate about ED&I as well. Why is that? What is it that's created that passion for you?
Again, it's about helping people. It's about helping people develop, and it's about helping everyone develop, whoever they are. And we forget sometimes that they are individual. They are. We do employ humans. They've got their own worlds, their own choices, their own, passions. So why shouldn't we tap into that? Because that could be a big benefit to us in terms of their experiences, their life experiences. Can always add a different perspective to any discussion. So yeah,
the diversity of thought piece is essential, isn't it? And I think more and more clients have diverse makeups, and so they want to work with people that do have diversity. I mean, why wouldn't you?
No, indeed. And you're right. Even in sort of client tenders, that's a big piece in terms of diversity and the culture of the firm. So yeah, it's very important across the piece. But it just makes sense.
Yeah. But I think you do some great work there, so really well done. And what about highlights of your career to date then? What would you say when you look back and you go, oh my gosh?
I think it was finding that job at Eagle Star.
Yeah.
Because I was there for a long time, and as I say, I got the benefit of not being in one job for 17 years. I got some experience and exposure to different parts of the business. So that was very, I look back at that with fondness. If nothing else, for the final salary pension as well. But no, I was very lucky to get exposed to different parts of the organisation.
Was that luck, or was that a lot of hard work, and that people recognising that you were putting everything into it? Because it's interesting when you say lucky. It's around, isn't it?
Bit of both. A bit of both, and that's around communication and finding those mentors to help you along the way, and making yourself known. About what your interests are, what you enjoy doing, and sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time.
Well, being present though, showing that you're going to commit, I think is a big thing.
And I guess here at James Cooper, I was this is my first sort of senior director role, and they saw that in me and gave me that opportunity, which is fantastic, and I still enjoy it now. Yeah.
Which is good. And what about the challenge at the moment of managing multi-generational teams? Because that's something I know that lots of people are talking about. How open are you to that in the firm? How do you have reverse mentoring? Do you have shadow boards? How does it work in your firm?
Yeah, good question. And I guess we've nothing sort of scientific around any of those sorts of practices. But for us, it's about listening. So, we do open that door for staff to talk to us, what's working for them, what's not working for them throughout the year, and try and understand what that means for them and how we can then maybe tailor our working practices, our environment, some of our benefits. So we do open that door quite widely. And I guess we're lucky a lot of the service lines have that multi-generational setup. Those teams, again, open that door to communication and listening, which is very important. We talk a lot about communication, but it's about listening and hearing, what they're telling you. And if you can act on it, great. If not, why not? What are we doing to bridge that gap. So yeah, whilst I don't think we're doing anything specific other than listening and communicating on a regular basis.
But that communication piece is essential, as we've talked about. It's coming up all the time, doesn't it?
How huge.
Essential it is. Yeah. And communicating is also listening, as you say.
Yeah.
Not just talking to everyone.
No, indeed, and again, it's fostering that culture of being friendly. Treating everyone with respect, and that goes a long way to helping those generations work together.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Actually, it's about respect. It's so key.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that are facing HRDs in professional services firms at the moment? And by that point, maybe a long list.
I guess the big ones will be talent retention and attraction. Continues, ever since I've been in it, it's always been tough, but more so now in terms of it's very much a candidate market. I go back to when I first joined the firm. 9 times out of 10, if we interviewed a candidate and they liked us and we offered, they'd accept, chop our arm off. Now, you've got to wait, because they might have 5-6 opportunities that they want to explore, which is just the way of the world. So finding good talent it continues to be very tough. And the other one, I guess, off the back of what we were talking about in terms of the pandemic, continues to be hybrid working and making sure that that's still fit for purpose, still working. And you see it across the industry, different firms trying different things, still trying to find the feet with it. So that still continues to be one to navigate cautiously.
I think that's interesting, because whenever I speak to anybody, they're always asking me what everyone else is doing with their hybrid working policy, because no one feels they've got it right yet.
Yeah. And that's something we thought about quite early on. So during the pandemic, we surveyed staff, so they spent however many months working remotely. Actually, when we do come out of this, what would suit you? What are you hoping to what would work for you in terms of work and home life? And we used that voice to develop what we've got now, and on the whole, it continues to work, continues to benefit individuals. No change for us at the time being.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was chatting to one of my team who's a qualified tax accountant and transitioned into recruitment. And he was saying that when he joined the workforce, it was during COVID. So he's never worked in an office 5 days a week. And, he's always worked in a hybrid working model. And that's how he works, and that's what he's used to. And then, you've got people of my generation that had only ever worked 5 days a week in the office. And it's about how, again, communication. You talk to people to say, it's great to be able to come into the office, because that's where a lot of learning and collaboration takes place.
Yes.
Which is so essential, particularly within your line of work as well, isn't it? I think.
Hugely, particularly when we've got such a large degree of students across the firm.
It's how people learn, but also respecting that people have grown up in a different world, and so they have a different idea of what they want to do, and so you've got to communicate in place, haven't you?
Yeah, and we try and balance that, particularly with new joiners. Whether they're a student or a lateral hire, that there's a period of time where they need to be essentially in the office as much as they possibly can, preferably full time, because we want them to embed themselves. We want them to get a good feel of the culture, get to make connections, make relationships with peers and colleagues. So we do have that initial period where hopefully that gets them entrenched into the firm, and then of course they're free to work flexibly.
Yeah, which is great, isn't it? And I think, again, one of the things I think is great about your firm is you're not London-centric. You've got national offices, and they are seen as different hubs as well, aren't they? But all working together in a really focused manner.
Yes, and it's always difficult when you've got more than one location. We all know that you can get nuances with culture and approach and practices, but not so much. No, we're quite hot on that, and that's where the partners can play a great part in terms of being on the same page, communicating frequently with each other. So I think, I'd like to think, and I certainly get it, whichever office I go into.
Yeah,
it's one of ours.
It feels the firm.
Yeah. So it does. That is hard work, regular, maintaining that. It's constant because that's what you don't want is one office becoming something different. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of travel as well? Then you tend to go around and see the different offices?
Try to. I encourage others in my team as well to make relationships and connections at other offices. So whilst we're predominantly Thames Valley, so Oxford, Reading, Newbury, we have got Southampton and we have got a small office in London, which is growing, which is great. When I started, we had one secretary in London just supporting visiting partners, and now we got a team of 10 based there. So
an office.
I know.
Fabulous. And what words of wisdom would you give then to Richard, maybe when he was looking in the newspaper to get a job because he couldn't join the police force? What would your words of wisdom be?
Don't be afraid to throw yourself in. We've touched on sort of forced opportunities or forced movements in terms of roles and jobs and stuff. So throw yourself in and give things a go. It might not be for you, but there's always plenty you can gain from a role, from a company, from an industry. And I guess don't be afraid to be that sponge. Might not be the career choice, but it'll be a great opportunity if you throw yourself in and open your eyes to gain some great experience and some knowledge, whatever that role may be.
Love that. Well, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, Richard. I've really enjoyed
Likewise,
it.
Nikki. Thank you.
And I'm definitely going to be a sponge away and just use everything as a learning experience. That's what it is, isn't it?
It is. It's life. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikki. Take care.